On top of having a vinyl collection, I also have a CD collection, and I thought I would go through some choice picks from that collection. I hope you enjoy hearing me ramble about music, so it is for you. Is this in the shot? We got Darkthrone, Panzerfaust. This is the fourth album of their black metal album's fifth album, if you include the 1991 death metal album they did. This album is wacky. It is whacked out. They even admit it. Fenriz admits it. He's like, yeah, we were very drunk during this. The vocals were just absolutely twisted. But I think, and it might be unpopular to say, this might be one of my favorites out of them. You have to get past those vocals though, because if you're not ready for those, ooh, you'll be inclined to hit the skip button. But man, I like it. But it's got Quintessence. That's a pretty popular Darkthrone song. It's slower, drudging. This one has a commentary disc from Fenriz, and that alone is reason enough to get the album. Hearing him talk about Darkthrone's music is the most entertaining thing. For me to just put on the album with a guy talking over it, that's saying something. I left the little sticker from the record store, and I think that makes it more valuable. This is Genghis Tron, Board Up the House. Yeah, I said Genghis Tron. They're, I guess, like an electronic grindcore band. I heard their crazy EP, Cloak of Love. Yeah, that EP was crazy. It would be like techno music for like 10 seconds, and then it'd go into like these crazy blast beats and him screaming his guts out. Over time, the band kind of evolved a bit, and this is probably their most mature release. And it was their last album. They broke up after that. They really focused on making a mature, cohesive album, and I think they nailed it. Katatonia, Brave Murder Day. If you're not too familiar with their 90s stuff, you would not recognize that this is a Katatonia album. This is their second album. A lot of times you get this classified as like goth metal. It's got that vibe. Totally different from Katatonia's later stuff. You know, they really went more of a rock direction. Michael Ackerfeld from Opeth is actually doing the vocals on here. This is before he really honed in his growls too, so he's kind of got more of the morning rise vocals. And it fits the music really well. They nailed it. This is one of my favorite metal albums to this day. It strikes that balance between, you know, heaviness and melody. I always like when bands can write that line. We got Sacramentum, Far Away from the Sun. This was sitting right next to Dissection's Storm of the Light's Bane, which I hold that album in high regard. But I grabbed this one, because we don't talk about this one as much. It's got that 90s Swedish melodic black metal sound. I sometimes gravitate towards that more than the Norwegian stuff. Can, with their album Tago Mago. I've only seen it written. Where do I start with this? They're an experimental rock band. They made most of their wave in the 70s. Bizarre vocals, all around a strange instrumentation. It rides the line between being progressive rock and being experimental. I wouldn't put this next to Genesis or King Crimson. Just kind of this weirder side to experimental progressive music. The song Guru, which is just chaos. It's following up the other super long song Hallelujah, which is just this nice grooving funky. Earlier this year I was driving in Florida, and I just played this the whole way as I was driving on I-4, and it really took the mind off of the traffic. This is a cool like driving song. I'm having a hard time describing this album, but that's all the more reason to listen to it. Check them out. I almost said K-A-N. C-A-N. You know, spelling's hard. Who cares? Talk, Laughing Stock. You might know Talk. They were a 80s pop band, and then they disappeared. But they didn't disappear as early as you might think. I didn't beat these CDs up. I bought them used. Yeah, Talk Talk wrote that song "It's My Life," and I think Kelly Clarkson covered it. So if you know that version, then you have Talk Talk to thank. This album came out in 1991. It was its predecessor, Spirit of Eating, came out in 1988. Both albums were huge departures from their synth pop 80s sound that they had established. The normal progression of a band is to continue to appeal to the highest common denominator of their audience and to make more friendly music to a wider audience. And Talk Talk kind of did this instead. And they made music they really wanted to make. Actually, I've heard the recording process on this album was kind of dreadful for a lot of people, so it may not have been what everyone wanted to make. It was like a lot of just jam sessions that they pieced together. A very beautiful album. As depressing as it is uplifting. I like that sentence. And it laid the groundwork for the first wave of post-rock music to come. While you may not be able to listen to a post-rock band now and be able to say, yeah, it sounds like Talk Talk, they were the little nudge that this kind of set things off a bit. Post-rock now has kind of made a name for itself for kind of having a certain formula and vibe, and I think this first wave was more just kind of a rejection of the standard rock formula, not doing the verse chorus type structure. They definitely did away with that here, and I think that's what influenced a lot of bands to think about the music they were making differently. This was the last release that Swans put out before they disbanded in the late 90s, before they reunited in 2010. That's called Swans Are Dead. It takes most of the tracks from their 1996 album, Soundtracks for the Blind, and you see it in a live setting. And the recordings are pretty good overall. Really listen to it for, feel happiness in the sound, and especially track 8 on the first CD, Blood Promise. It's a 15-minute version of a previously 3 to 4 minute song. They took this song and just said, we're stretching it out. We're gonna make this song almost unrecognizable except for the lyrics. But man, the song is a trip and it sounds great. One time I was driving in a horrible rainstorm and I was listening to this album. Somehow the rain poured down harder and harder as the song built up more and more. And right when the guitar started distorting, I saw lightning, and then the rain was just so intense that I could barely see. And there was I could just see the lights of the oncoming cars coming toward me, and other than that, it was nothing. It was just pure blackness. And that painted a scary picture for driving a car. I should have pulled over, but at the time I was like, I can't pull over. I'm gonna hydroplane if I start braking. So I just kept going. That song got me through that patch. I'll never be able to listen to the song the same way again because, you listen to it when you think you're gonna die. It's hard to recreate that experience, and nor should you try to recreate it because you shouldn't put your life at risk. Not only that, if you were purposely doing it, it wouldn't be the same either. It has to be out of your control. How else would it resonate with you? Good album. Locrian, they're a sleeper favorite of mine. I really love the atmosphere they evoke. And they ride this line between black metal and drone metal. Very apocalyptic in their songwriting approach, as you can tell by this image of this foggy parking lot with a lone shopping cart. Very interesting choice for a metal album. You don't see that too often. This one came out in 2011. A heavy emphasis on electronics, but not in a way that they'd ever be labeled as that. They strike that balance quite well, and that's hard to do and maintain your metal status. They're more on the atmospheric post-metal type side of things, so if you're into that, this might not be something that always comes across your radar when you're looking for post-metal music, because it's not, a Rosetta or an Isis or a Cult of Luna. It's something different, but I think listeners of that would enjoy this equally as much. All right, we got another Darkthrone. This is the album that set it off. This was a death metal album that they turned black metal. look at that aesthetic. I mean, these guys are, had to have been terrifying to come out at the time. This also has a commentary disc from Fenriz, and I remember this one very vividly. Him talking about his hitting his cowbell, and he's like, I wish I still had that thing. And he's like, oh, I'm hitting the double kick drum because I didn't like this riff, and I'm trying to kill the riff. It's like, oh, I hated this part. And it's funny to hear someone who made this album talk about it in such a casual way, juxtaposed to how glorified it is by the metal community. Like, this is a legendary album, and this guy's here, he's talking about, I love that cowbell. It was like some makeshift cowbell he did, and he's like, yeah, we were really drunk, and how something that he's like about, I'm sure he's proud of it, but he's he just talked about it in such a normal way for something that's so held up, and I think it deserves to be held up. And don't get me wrong, but yeah, I loved how just like nonchalant he was. So I always put this album next to my Darkthrone because it's similar in like the way it looks. But this is the Weeknd's Trilogy. Abel released these 3 mixtapes over the course of 2011. We didn't really know who the Weeknd was at the time, and this is what this was a splash he made into the world. And my humble opinion is that he's never topped this either, which is sad to say. I hope he does. I just heard the new album, After Hours, and I think this is the closest he's come to putting together a cohesive and consistent piece of music. One thing that stands out about Trilogy is the consistency of it from track to track. This downbeat, dreary, atmospheric vibe is consistent through 2.5 hours of music. That's hard to pull off. This album is borderline experimental when it comes to that sound. A lot of the songs, they go above 5 minutes. Thursday, the second disc, which is probably my favorite, it's got songs where they're just like plodding along and not following like a consistent formula, and I find that to be great. I like that a lot. If we want to do a 4-minute like beat where I'm just crooning over it and we just kind of have like some washed out like synths over it, like, let's do it. I can sit and hang out with that all day, no problem there. Now, if you're not familiar with this might be Abel at his I don't know, most disturbing when it comes to lyrics. Like, I love this thing, but like the lyrics are completely detestable. But I think that's part of the story arc of it. Him being a party monster, and womanizing, and just doing all kinds of drugs, and that's the world that he invites you in, and you are taking in. Completely immersed by just the sounds of the music. I'm always surprised by when someone can sing something so beautifully, but the words themselves are so like dark or disturbing. Like, whoa, what am I supposed to feel right now? And that's everywhere on this album. He seems to have kind of ridden that formula into subsequent releases, but none as grotesque as he gets here. I mean, he's not answering to a mass audience. But I think overall, if you look at it from start to finish, I don't think he's totally glorifying this life either. In some ways he may feel like he can't get out of it. And I don't know if he's like this as a person, but I don't find that he's painting any of this in a flattering light as you would like, other albums within, a similar lyrical content. But I think you have to consume the whole thing at once to really feel that. Even judging by the dreary tone of it and the kind of the darkness of it, it doesn't lend itself to be a life that you want to emulate either. So in that respect, I think it's a piece of art, and he's communicating a certain lifestyle, and he's not advocating for it. There's a lot of criticism when it comes to how things are portrayed on music. I think they get a lot of flack for that because of how it's not totally clear whether this is a character or not. But he's not releasing this music under his own name, so there might be a distinction to be made there. But yeah, enough of that. It's a good album. Don't read too much into it. That is what I got. That might be a long video, so if I cut out something in the stack, and you really want to know and you can tell like what it was, let me know and I'll just type it up in the comment. So take care of yourself.